So it is 10:30. Should we give Don another minute?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good Sunday morning. My name is Megan Moore, and on behalf of the Center for Functional Nutrition, I do welcome you to our Sunday morning coffee house. We've been doing this every Sunday now for a number of months, and it is something that we enjoy, meeting people from all over the U.S. And I'm going to hand the coffee house over to Brian Mariani, and he will introduce our presenter for today. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Megan, and thank you, everyone. So wonderful to be with you all this morning and connecting in this awesome space that we have here every Sunday. And I'm just going to be muting people as they come on, just so that we have a clear connection so we can all hear each other clearly. So yes, welcome to our Sunday morning coffee house, and I'm really excited this morning to be introducing everyone to Don. He is someone I've gotten to know a little bit over the past few months. He has joined a number of coffee houses, and he was introduced to me by Catherine Taylor, who is on with us this morning. And for anyone who has participated this year, hopefully you've been on a coffee house with Catherine, and she's absolutely brilliant. And she has connected us with Don, and I've had a number of conversations with him. And I think what I've gotten from Don is he speaks very, very clearly, and his words are carefully chosen, and I really appreciate that. And what he brings is very clear and exceptional language around these kind of these spiritual topics. He's someone who has been very spiritual his whole life. I'll let him tell his story. But he is going to bring some very some interesting language to this topic of spirituality and how we can access our own spiritual guides. And I'm really excited for him to share that with us today. It's a topic that is absolutely fascinating to me. And so without further ado, Don Snyder, please tell us who you are, how you came here, and what you'll be sharing with us today.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good morning. It's a little cold here in Minnesota. We're down below freezing, so yeah, it feels good to be in the house warming up. I'm just going to give you a quick bio of myself. So I was born in Minnesota, raised as a Lutheran in the Midwest, like a lot of people are. And during the course of my lifetime, my father was a high-ranking member in our church, so to speak. And like most kids that went to Lutheran's church, I also belonged to a youth group. And when I was in 8th grade, that youth group went up north for a weekend retreat. During that retreat, for lack of a better term at the time, I started talking to God, and God started talking back to me. I didn't realize that I was psychic at the time. I didn't know what that meant. That was still voodoo. Anyway, so I went to my father and told him all this great news, and all of a sudden I was blasphemous and sacrilegious, and you can't talk to God without proper training, and yada, yada, yada. And so I kind of hid the whole psychic thing from everybody for a long time, for about 40 years, actually. But I would use it during the course of my life over those next 40 years to solve computer programs, to help my daughters. As I was raising them, they would come to me and ask what I thought the best solution was. And oftentimes I didn't know, because there was no book on parenting. So I would go into the psych mode and let that come out, and everything seemed to work out very good. Back in 2010, I I had to have some back surgery. I was a competitive hockey player at the time. And that kind of slowed me down a little bit. But I kept going back. You know, I could feel a change coming, but I went back to the hockey, the old lifestyle, everything. And then 2 years later, I had to have a second back surgery and a knee surgery. And suddenly the pain to pleasure ratio changed. And things started happening, for lack of a better term. I started having visions. I started hearing strong voices in my head when I wasn't ready to hear this information. And so I talked to my mom, who actually is a minister in the church that she belongs to. And she's like, well, you got to go see Echo. And I'm like, have you seen Echo's website? It's got this thing called Orapalooza plastered all over it. I mean, really, seriously, Orapalooza. And we both laughed about it. And she just said, you know, go see Echo. So I went to see Echo, and long story short, here we are now. In about October of 16, I met Lucia, my wife, who's on here with us. And she had been doing some work for a woman down in Texas who taught Akashic Records information in classes. So I offered to read a couple of the books because I thought it was interesting. We hadn't gotten a lot of information during Echo's class at that time. So I got a chance to read a book by Edgar Casey, which led me to another book by Akemi G, which eventually led me to something called How to Read the Akashic Records by Linda Howe. And so I thought, oh, okay, so I've been doing this for like 40 years, but let's see how everybody else is doing it. And the next thing I know, I'm on the phone with Echo giving her a reading, and she stops me mid reading and says, say, honey, what are you doing next Saturday? I'd like to have you up at Orapalooza. And it was just like, okay, this has got to be where it's going. So I put myself out there, created a website, and started teaching Akashic Records classes along with doing readings. And in a nutshell, that's kind of how things got going for me. I've been a computer programmer since 1980. Yeah, sounds about right. Since 1980, I've been working with computers since 1977. So a lot of people are kind of mystified by the fact that here I am doing all the logic stuff, and I can also still access the metaphysical stuff. And the reality is that's a dual side. It's Buddhism has a term called duality for living your life. And I believe, like shamans believe, that you produce something that is, how do I want to say it, that contributes to society, hence my computer programming. But additionally, there's a spiritual side that shamans have. And I'm not saying I'm a shaman, I know a little bit about it. And I think it's a good starting point for anybody that's going down the spiritual path. But anyway, with being a shaman, most shamans do it part-time. They have a full-time job or a part-time job that contributes to society, and the rest of us and the rest of the time is when we get to do our metaphysical work. Okay, so that's enough on me. What are the Akashic Records? The Akashic Records are psychic information, basically. What is psychic information? Well, let's talk about the word Akasha. In Sanskrit, it means that which from everything comes. Loosely, that translates in English to the ether. And science knows what the ether is. They've identified that there's something there, but they can't measure it. They can't actually touch it, see it, and feel it. So they don't want to believe that it's there. But if you were to take a carbon atom and expand it so that the nucleus was about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, the entire atom would be the size of the island of Puerto Rico, and there'd be 6 little peas running around the nucleus. So you've got all this space. What's filling it up? That's the ether, okay? Akasha is part of the psychic realm. Everything that you say, do, feel over the course of your lifetime is recorded energetically in the ether. So in essence, you carry your records with you. Think about the example of the atom and how much space the ether actually occupies versus the neutrons and electrons and protons. All of that information goes with you wherever you are, and it goes with you at a soul level. So your physical body may or may not contain parts of your Akasha, but the energy that makes up your soul, that's where you carry your records with you. In order to access this kind of information, then, why people ask, why don't all psychics do this? And pretty much anybody can. You don't even have to be psychic to do it. But the reality of the situation is, in order to access it for yourself, there's a level of honesty that needs to be there. You will ask questions and you'll get answers that you may or may not like, and you'll ask the question again and get a different answer that you do like. That's not reading the records. That's manipulating data. That's totally, totally different. When we're talking about accessing the records, there's a couple of books. The first one is called Divine Magic, and that's written by a woman named Doreen Virtue. Her take on this is a rewrite of something known as the Kabbalion, published by the Three Initiates back around 1920. It explains very well that everything is energy. Timothy talked about this a couple of months ago when he was on, and everything is energy. Because of that, everything that we think, see, do, feel, everything gets recorded within the Akashic field or the ether. Okay, so that's kind of a technical explanation of what I guess you could call the ether or the Akashic records. I'd like to read something, an excerpt from Edgar Cayce here before we go on. And it says, the records are upon time and space, which are manifestations of that influence or force we call God. They are both old and ever new, but only in patience does the finite mind become aware of the value of same upon the infinite or the spiritual mind. Thus the records are taken from this skein of time and space. Hence, as an entity enters and leaves consciousness in materiality, there is left upon time and space that which has been the activity. Thus there may be the interpreting of the same. That was a key couple of paragraphs for me, because when I was talking to people about Akashic Records prior to reading that, everybody told me that they were in a library over in India and you had to transport there telepathically and open up the right book. And that's a good explanation. It's a reasonable explanation for a lot of people. And 50 years ago, we didn't know about computers. We didn't know about databases. We didn't know about energetic impregnation on a disk drive. That's all new stuff. So to explain it that way is just fine. But the reality is that was just a way to make it easy for people to understand things. It's all out there in the energy of the universe. So let's read one more thing from Edgar Cayce. And it says, rather than simply being a place, the reading is emphasized that these records are everywhere. These same records were accessible by the subconscious mind through dreams, through reveries, and through intuitive and esoteric exercises. Not only do the Akashic records store, track, and compile everything about every person in the history of the world, but they continually attempt to guide, educate, and transform everyone to eventually become the very best that they can be. And I think that kind of sums everything up right there, is that information is out there for our good. Some people will try to use psychic information against us, and that's fine. That's just their path, and there's nothing that we can do about that other than hold our boundaries and not allow ourselves to go down that path. But when you think about how Edgar Cayce viewed the records, and this was written like in 1940, he didn't see that as a library. It wasn't a place. It was everywhere. And that tells us that Akasha and the entire psychic field pervades us, especially within the physical realm, and we just don't realize it. So the access comes through being able to quiet your mind. That's the most important thing if you're going to do anything metaphysical, whether it's healing, whether it's psychic, whether it's reading the Akashic Records, it just really doesn't matter. If you can't quiet your mind, you can't access your subconscious. And when you can't access your subconscious, you can't access psychic information. So I'm going to read one more excerpt here from a woman by the name of Linda Howe. And this is the book that I use to teach classes with. I don't necessarily agree with everything she says, but the gist of it is there. So the Akashic Records are a dimension of consciousness that contains a vibrational record of every soul and its journey. The vibrational body of consciousness exists everywhere. Hang on, I got a little cotton mouth going here. This vibrational body of consciousness exists everywhere in its entirety and is completely available at all times in all places. As such, the records are an experiential body of knowledge that contains everything that every soul has ever thought, said, and done over the course of its existence, as well as its future possibilities. So what we see when we open the records aren't just history, but also we can see future possibilities. Now, time as we know it in a linear fashion doesn't really exist. And so seeing a best possibility one day can be altered by the actions you take that same day. And the next day, your best possibility has changed. So if you were to picture a honeycomb where all of the cells are tied together and make that three-dimensional, as you move from each cell to cell, you're making choices. Your access to certain cells becomes easier or more difficult, longer or shorter, i.e., depending on which choices that you make. And so when we're dealing with the Akashic Records, people will oftentimes ask me, well, what's my best possibility? I can see a best possibility, but I can see other possibilities too. And so I try to temper everything by this is the best possibility, but there are others. We can't predict the future being psychic. But that being said, I got a message last November that told me I was no longer going to be doing readings, and I didn't understand the message very well. And finally, I broke down and got Echo Bodine to give me a reading. And it was very clear that the use of my psychic information is going to transform from the spiritual realm as much, it's going to work as much within the spiritual realm as it does within the physical realm. And so I've started limiting the number of readings that I'm doing. And I'm not saying somebody can't ask for a reading, but I used to do a lot of expos and I get what I call tire kickers. They were curiosity seekers. Oh man, I've never had an Akashic reading. Let's see what that's like. The reality of the situation is that within Akasha, you have to go in there with a pure heart and be willing to take whatever information is given to you. I wrote an article for The Edge a couple of years back, and I'm just going to read you the last paragraph. What I find most fascinating about the Akashic Records is any information provided comes from a place of light, love, and courage. While some answers are not what you want to hear, they are always the answers you need to hear. The Akashic Records are unbiased and forthright, always attempting to mentor, lead, and assist each soul to its maximum potential. Therefore, it's important to access your records humbly, leaving your ego at the door. Self-accessing other forms of psychic information can be difficult due to our egos and built-in biases. With the Akashic Records, it is realistic to access your own records, provided you are willing to listen and ask for guidance from a place of light, love, and courage. Soul work means giving in to what is, accepting what is, and being willing to change ourselves allowing maximum growth, soul growth potential in this lifetime. So I've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, kind of jumped around a lot. But the point I want to make with the Akashic Records, number one, it's all energy. Anybody can access it. Number two, if you're not willing to go in humbly and accept the information, if you're just there to find out what's going to happen, you're not going to get the information you want. And it's that simple. The Akashic Records are here to provide an access in the physical world to know what our soul wants us to do within the course of this lifetime. I've used it for other things. I've used my psychic abilities for other things, but the essence of it is it's for soul growth. And I just like people to understand that. And I think, Brian, that's probably as long as you need to have me talking.
That's absolutely brilliant, Don. You know, as I started out with, I appreciate how you communicate these types of topics just very clearly. I got a whole lot from today. You know, I was introduced to the Akashic Records close to probably 2 years ago, and it always fascinated me. I always got a lot of value from it, whether I wanted to hear it or not. But today, it just brought me into this very practical place, like a very real place that didn't feel so far away. So I just appreciated how you did that. And I'm going to stop there. I could go on, but please, if anyone has a question or a comment for Don, just start waving at me or unmute yourself. I'm just looking back and forth here. Okay, Russell, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, it took me a second to unmute. So first of all, Don, thank you very much for being here and sharing this information. I just want to say I've been on a spiritual journey since I was 18 years old, and I'm 65, so a little more than 40 years. And what I experienced this morning was something that typically is esoteric and complicated and kind of inaccessible. And you made it very simple, very clear, very understandable, and therefore very accessible. And I want to thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for saying that, Russell.
Yeah, that's right on. That was great. Thank you, Russell. I'm looking, I've got some claps from Mary, that's brilliant. Anyone else that would like to share a comment or a question for Don?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, let Wes go first, Brian.
Sure. Go ahead, Wes.
Okay, I just want to say Don is amazing. I met Don many years ago, and he's proved himself over and over again. I send many of my clients to him that are at that crossroads in life, trying to feel like they're stuck and they can't figure out why. And they thank me profusely after they have a session with Don. So Don, thanks for your great work.
Yeah, and thank you, Wes. I appreciate your having confidence enough to send people to me.
All the time.
Thank you, Wes. Brilliant. For everyone who's participates often in our coffee houses, Wes will actually be a featured presenter shortly. So nice. Thank you, Wes. And yes, thank you for your comments for Don. Absolutely. Anyone else? Let's see. Yes, of course, Catherine Taylor, go. You're still muted.
I know.
Oh, there you go.
Well, what I want to say to you, Don, I loved this explanation of it, because we both do the Akashic Records, but like everybody's saying, you made it so down to earth. But the thing I value about you the most in our community is that you walk both worlds. And we've talked about this, how, I mean, you sit there and you look like Jesus, but you're walking in the corporate world, and you're in a beautiful position to kind of bring that higher vibration into that world, whether that world even knows they're being kind of introduced to that vibration or not. And I just love that you are kind of balancing those two. And, you know, it's just, it takes a special person to be able to go in and out of that third dimension and that fifth dimension with such ease. And so I'm really glad to see that you're part of the CoffeeHouse community, and especially since we don't have the archivists anymore.
Right.
It's wonderful to see all of us kind of gravitating towards here. But thank you for making this so simple today.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Don would not be here without you, that's for sure. So thank you,
Yes.
thank you, thank you.
I can say a lot of nice things about Catherine over the last 2 years since we've met. So, and a lot of it's going to sound just too mushy. So I'm going to let it go and say she's the greatest. Thank you.
Oh, please. Oh, please.
Yeah, we could all go on and on, that's for sure. I saw Mary. Did you want to share? I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah,
Mary Harris, there you are.
Yes, thank you. I too wanted to say thank you. I was clapping because I agree with Russell and with Catherine. It's you just made it accessible. It made it you bring it down to every day, and as above, so below. So I got all of the baby. Thanks for being you, Don. That's my top and my bottom line. Thanks for being you and for letting your gifts letting it flow through you.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome, dear.
Beautiful.
Everybody's talking about making it accessible. I guess I think there's a link on the CoffeeHouse invite this week to my website.
Mhm.
On that website, there's a page called resources. And in there, there's some books on learning how to read the Akashic Records, if anybody's interested. It'll take you to an Amazon link. I don't get anything out of it. It just makes it easier for me to direct people. So, you know, feel free to use that as a resource for yourself.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Don. I was going to suggest, you know, we can't cover everything on the CoffeeHouse, but for those that, of course, want to get in touch with Don or just want more information or more learning and growing, please do go to his website, and that resources page would be a great place to start. But Don is accessible. All of his information is on his website. So thank you so much, Don. That was just a special sharing today, and just awesome. So thank you for being here with us.
So I think Megan's been waiting patiently.
Oh, and Megan, did you want to share? I'm sorry.
I do. I
Go ahead.
appreciated your speaking about the ether.
Yeah.
And again, it was in a language that was so practically easy to understand. And my imagination was just wondering about this ether, though. I was just imagining it. And then thinking for myself, having my history in this ether, you know, who I am, who I've been. And it's maybe an odd question, but do things get tangled up? Do people get tangled up? I mean, do people, how does, maybe.
That's a good question. So in some respects, the analogy that people have been using for a long time, that there's a library with your book in there, and you pull out the book and it only contains the information that's relevant to you. I believe there's a filtering process that allows me, when I make a connection with Megan Moore, to only see the information that is related to Megan Moore's soul. And regardless of whether that soul is currently named Megan Moore or Bob Johnson from, 1642, it really doesn't matter. The connection is there. And that's one of the things that I do prior to every reading, is I make sure I can connect to the person's soul before I actually accept a reading. More so for remote readings. At expos and things just happen. But I can tell when somebody is ready to actually have a reading and when they're not, because all of the information is available. That connection, some people would equate is to, oh, I found the book on the library shelf. Okay. And now we're going to start reading it. But I have not had issues that I can recall with having tangled up somebody's information. There's been a couple of times where people questioned the information, and that's fine. I mean, I get what I get, and I can't change that. And you're going to get an honest explanation of what I received, period, point blank. That's it, final. If it's done any other way, it's not helpful for people. And so when people question the information, I just tell them I get what I get. And then oftentimes, 3 or 4 months later, they'll come back and go, I would have never believed that, but it is what it is. And that's exactly what happened. We saw a best possibility. They trusted it, even though they didn't like it. They didn't believe it. They gave it a go, and things happened. This is a strange business to be in, because when I look at it from my perspective as having been a hockey coach or a college football player, or all of those, the computer programmer, all those physical world things, it just doesn't make any sense. And yet I've played my best football games. I've played my best hockey games. I've played my best golf games when I detach from my body. And so being in the physical world isn't always necessary. You don't have to be grounded. When I play my best sports, I actually feel like I'm a third party observer looking at it from above. And I know that kind of goes off the subject that you had asked about, but bottom line is, Megan, it doesn't get mixed up. There's a reason for it. It's because that energy is all attached to itself. Now, granted, it's attached to somebody else's energy. Some of your energy is attached to Brian at this point because of the connection you have. Some of it's going to be attached to Russell because he's got an attachment to Brian. But those are all different types of energy, and you can feel the difference when you're actually connected to somebody's energy. And that's the only thing I can tell you. I don't have a lot of formal training. I didn't take Linda's class. I didn't take Edgar Casey's class. I started doing this, and I had enough people confirm the information that I was getting that I thought, okay, it's good enough. We'll offer it out there, because I feel like I should be offering this as something that other people can make use of. And it's worked out rather well, actually.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great question. I'm glad that, thank you for catching that, Don. That was awesome. And a really, an even further deepening of the learning today. Thank you so much.
Looks like Carol has a question.
Oh, sorry. Who was it?
Carol?
Oh, sorry, Carol, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. I had my very second Akashic reading here in East Tennessee, as Brian knows, about 3-4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to it with a totally open mind. You just, my mind was blown. And it all made sense when you sort of think about it afterwards. I'm actually sitting with my feet on a grounding mat. So that was part of it. And I can feel the energy coming up from the earth, and it all makes so much sense. But it's really, you've just got to listen and feel, and not have any brain into the process. At least that's what I found.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Carol. There's no doubt about that. It's totally a question of being able to quiet your mind. And if anybody's having issues learning how to quiet their mind, I have a meditation technique that I teach when I give classes. That's also on that resources page on my website. And it's a 30-second to 1-minute meditation. You can do the 20 minutes stare at the blank wall thing if you like. And I've done that, and it's helpful sometimes, but the majority of the time, you can quiet your mind in 5 to 10 breaths. So it's worth looking at if you're having troubles getting into that state where you can cross over. But you're absolutely right, Carol. There's got to be a level of sincerity there, or the records just, they won't give the information that they're supposed to give.
guess you have to trust who is giving you the reading too. But,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
That's why I like when Catherine gives me cross readings, because it makes me feel better because I know her.
when you talk about tangled, I took that to be kind of soul groups, tangled with people that you're supposed to be meeting in a way, but maybe that's not. I know that's not what Megan meant.
No, the soul group thing is definitely there. I mean, there's your soul group, and there's what we call connected soul groups. And energetically, everybody in your soul group is vibrating around or at the same frequency. And that's the cool part. Those are the souls you can implicitly trust. Even if they do something that feels nasty to you, you made an agreement with them prior to incarnating that you were going to have them help you learn a lesson. And that's probably what happened with my father. But long story short is that the entanglement that Megan was talking about doesn't happen. It's a solid connection energetically. And like I say, I test it out before every remote reading just to make sure it's going to happen. So.
Thank you, Carol. Great question, great comments. And I'm sure we could keep going and going. I do want to get to our good news for today. So I will say thank you, Don. Thank you for everything you shared today. Thank you for everyone for participating. This was a really heavy participation on everyone here, and I just absolutely love it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So yes, we do want to do our good news for everyone. This is always an exciting part of our coffee house where our intention is to leave you, of course, with the value from our presenter, but then with a nice golden nugget to just walk away on Sunday with a smile, with something to share with people that you love, family, friends, like that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Danny Shanahan. He's actually my godfather, and he has been my spiritual guide since I was born. You know, this whole world has always felt very distant to me, something that I wasn't maybe that interested in accessing, but Danny has always been in my life to bring me there and to keep me connected. So he's a very, very special person in my life, and he is that person for a lot of people. So Danny Shanahan, please unmute and take us away.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And thank you, Don, and thank you everybody for sharing. I really enjoyed this walk into the Akashic record, into the boundary of it anyway, the great embrace of it. I love the way you spoke about consciousness, and there, what I got from this was that, you know, all of us are at some point in our life, we turn to something greater than our own awareness, our own individual self, and we're looking for light and information on who we are, where we came from, and where we are now, and what the possibilities are for the future. So there's two poems here that I'd like to read, and the word beloved is mentioned in this poem. So the beloved can be, I think the way you described it was that the intent of the Akashic record was to provide love, light, and guidance, I think were the, and so
Courage.
It can be encourage. And so when I speak of the beloved, I'm sure you'll have some image or way of embodying that or recognizing that. So this poem is called Turn Away from All That You Know. Turn away from all that you know now. Turn to the one whose gaze upholds this very universe, whose name beats in your heart, whose love throbs in your blood. Remove your hat, your coat and shoes. Let that outer world go now. Put on the garment of humility. Become the wick of the candle. Be lit with the flame of the beloved. Take off your coat, your hat, and your shoes. Let that outer world go now. Put on the garment of humility. Become the wick of the candle. Be lit with the flame of the beloved. And so this is the second one, and then I'm going to read the last poem. Do we have enough time for that, Brian, for 2 poems? Okay. And this was a collection of poems that's developed over readings that I've given for people in recovery from addiction. And addiction is one form of suffering and affects many, but we all suffer, right? We all suffer. And we all call out, and we all do this turning toward each other or to something or someone greater than ourselves for a blessing or a healing or some guidance. Let the wings of a prayer catch and lift you now. Quiet the heart. Let the peace of your soul work through you. Let the peace of your soul work through you. The soul is not in the body. The soul is not in the body. The body is in the soul. A bloom on the tree of the beloved. The body is in the soul. A bloom on the tree of the beloved. We are not alone. We are not alone. Peace is a shawl woven on the loom of surrender. Peace is a shawl woven on the loom of surrender. Breath is the primordial mantra. Listen to its divine sound, flowing in and out. This infinite tide that knows the way home, to the sanctuary of letting go, to the sanctuary of letting go. And this is to October, and there are images here from Alaska, where I used to live, and but it's part of a collection of poems called the Lotus Seed Poems, which I can send a link to. It's an audio book. There is great discourse among trees now. Everywhere maples and oaks are dancing. The October moon, the glistening rivers, and migrant winds arouse the watershed. The October moon, the glistening rivers, and migrant winds arouse the watershed. There are messengers moving through the forest like herds of caribou across the tundra. This is a language needing no interpreter. When the will of summer speaks, to the darkness of fall and winter, the undertow of the other world calls everything to itself then. When the will of summer speaks to the darkness of fall and winter, the undertow of the other world calls everything to itself then. It's the time of gathering and letting go. Even the tall pines are alert, listening to the cries of crows and geese in flight. This is the knowing, inherent in everything, flowing everywhere forever. Even the tall pines are alert, listening to the cries of crows and geese in flight. This is the knowing, inherent in everything, flowing everywhere forever.
Thank you, Danny. I have been blessed my whole life to hear your voice and your words, and I have no doubt they resonated with our coffee house this morning. So I'm smiling, and I see a lot of other smiles, and I see stillness and that quiet mind that Dawn brought us to. So with the help of Dawn bringing us there and you giving us the way to walk out, I just want to thank you all for being with us. As I say every week, this doesn't happen without you. So with you, this happens, and we're very grateful for everyone who shows up here. We're committed to continuing, and thank you for participating and growing this with us. So everyone unmute yourself, big virtual hug, happy Sunday, and thank you all for being here.
Yes, have a good week.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.